If two individuals are truly destined to be together, there is a constant dynamic that never falters. It is irrelevant how contrasting their backgrounds are or how startling their initial encounter feels. This singular element always manifests at the very beginning. The majority of people assume that fate appears gentle and beautiful right from the start. They imagine it shows up as immediate comfort, effortless affection, and an underlying sense that every piece of life has finally aligned. They picture two people crossing paths, exchanging smiles, and realizing instantly that their search is over. However, genuine fate does not operate in that manner. Genuine fate steps in softly and subsequently upends everything. It does not offer tranquility initially. It introduces disruption. When two people are authentically meant for one another, the universe does not hurry them into a unified existence. Instead, it creates space. It pulls them apart, interrogates their convictions, and compels them to look squarely at themselves. It dismantles illusions they were completely blind to before. And this is by no means cruelty. This is preparation. If you believe two people can be truly destined, hit like right now. Because before two destined individuals can genuinely unite, they must undergo a profound internal shift. If two people are truly meant to be together, there is one occurrence that almost always unfolds. Many individuals believe fate resembles instant delight. They picture two people encountering each other, all obstacles vanishing, and existence suddenly turning uncomplicated and fluid. Yet genuine fate does not manifest in such a tender fashion. Genuine fate typically enters your world by unsettling it first. When two people are authentically meant for one another, the universe does not accelerate their journey into love. Instead, it frequently creates a divide. It shatters their mistaken assumptions, tests their expectations, and remodels them as individuals. This cycle reoccurs time and time again, and that is the singular occurrence that always unfolds. People frequently misunderstand the true nature of destined love. They assume it ought to feel cozy from the very first moment, resembling a sanctuary where pain cannot enter. However, destined love rarely commences with cozy feelings. It commences with recognition. The primary indicator of a profound, purposeful bond is not tranquility. It is recognition. You cross paths with someone, and a part of your inner being responds, well before your intellect has an opportunity to comprehend the situation. You might not feel tranquil. You might not feel secure. You might not even feel certain about them. Yet you feel perceived in a manner that deeply destabilizes you. It feels as though they detect elements of your character that you normally conceal, even from your own gaze. This can produce confusion because most individuals anticipate that affection should feel calming and validating. Yet fate regularly feels distressing initially. This distress does not imply the individual is incorrect for you. It usually indicates the precise opposite. It signifies that they are reflecting dimensions of yourself that you have been actively evading. They serve as a mirror for your anxieties, your scars, and your unresolved internal struggles. They do not merely perceive the persona you present to society. They see beneath the surface, and that exposure can feel threatening. That is precisely why destined bonds often feel turbulent rather than effortless. They introduce conscious awareness before they introduce proximity. This is likewise the reason why people who are ultimately meant to be together rarely remain united at the starting point. If two people are truly destined to share a future, life almost always separates them early on. This separation is not accidental. It happens for specific reasons. One individual may still be harboring lingering emotional wounds. The other might be terrified of letting their guard down and showing vulnerability. One may not yet comprehend their inherent value. The other may extend affection from a place of insecurity rather than wholeness. On occasion, both individuals remain unformed, and unformed people, even with the best of intentions, can inflict deep pain upon one another. Consequently, destiny steps in and establishes a gap. It whispers, "Not yet." It recognizes that if these two individuals unified prematurely, they would ruin what possesses the potential to become something deeply meaningful. The distance, regardless of the agony it brings, is a vital piece of the architecture. It is not punishment, it is preparation. When destined individuals find themselves apart, the heartache feels entirely different from ordinary grief. It is not merely sorrow, it is profound confusion. It feels equivalent to losing your coordinates. You do not simply long for the other individual, you feel as though a piece of your inner architecture has vanished. This occurs because destined bonds are not anchored to the ego. They are anchored to growth. When an individual of this nature exits your life, it compels you to examine your inner world. It drives you to confront matters you have successfully sidestepped for an extended duration. Comment, destined. If you've ever felt a connection that wouldn't leave you alone, you start to identify your terror of abandonment. You perceive the extent to which you rely on outside validation. You detect your tendency to overextend yourself simply to keep individuals close. You wake up to the ways you avoid taking accountability for your own emotional fulfillment. These insights are distressing, but they are absolutely mandatory. The suffering you experience is not designed to crush you. It is designed to awaken you. Destined love possesses a method of transforming you in complete silence. Even when there is a total lack of communication, even when silence prevails, an internal shift occurs. Even when logic commands you to move forward, even when there is absolutely no contact, you begin to transform. You become far more conscious of your inner state. You become much more intentional regarding who you permit into your private sphere. You begin operating with greater honesty concerning your emotions and your personal boundaries. Conditions you once tolerated no longer feel acceptable. Scenarios you used to endure now leave you depleted. Individuals you previously pursued no longer carry the same fascination. You start to crave substance over superficial notice. You long for authentic connection rather than fleeting comfort. Frequently, you fail to realize that this personal evolution is fundamentally linked to that specific individual. Yet the transformation commenced the very instant they stepped into your reality. They served as the catalyst. They initiated a progression within your soul. This category of bond does not foster obsession, it fosters reflection. You do not lose your identity by obsessing over them continuously. Instead, you begin evaluating your own life, your behavioral trends, and your personal decisions. You contemplate who you are and who you are evolving into. You begin posing weightier inquiries to yourself. Why do I extend affection in this specific manner? Why am I terrified of intimacy? Why do I accept less than what I am truly worth? These inquiries incrementally remold your entire being. Destined bonds operate through mechanisms that are far from obvious on the surface level. They may vanish from your day-to-day routine, but their imprint endures. They alter your perception of relationships. They alter your perception of yourself. They elevate your expectations, not merely for outside individuals, but for your personal conduct and self-respect. They instruct you that love is not strictly about being unified. It is simultaneously about arriving at wholeness entirely on your own. As time progresses, you might observe that you are no longer prepared to reenact old, destructive loops. You cease pursuing individuals who lack the capacity to meet you on an emotional plane. You cease dismissing warning signs simply to feel selected. You begin prioritizing tranquility, truthfulness, and reciprocal dedication. This evolution feels entirely organic, despite being midwived by distress. And that is precisely how you identify that the bond carried profound significance. Destined love is not boisterous. It does not invariably remain. On occasion, it arrives, transforms your architecture, and departs. On occasion, it departs specifically so you can mature into the version of yourself capable of enduring a lifelong bond. Whether the individual comes back or stays away is not always the core issue. The objective was the internal metamorphosis, the awakening, the redirection toward a more profound, more deliberate method of existing and offering affection. When two individuals are authentically meant for one another, their narrative never proceeds along a straight trajectory. It navigates through distance, confusion, and deep internal labor. It demands development prior to unification. And that cycle, reoccurring time and time again, is the singular occurrence that always unfolds. You catch yourself thinking of them during intervals when you are becoming increasingly conscious of your inner world. During stretches when you are transforming silently from within, during hours of the night when your surroundings fall completely quiet and your inner voice grows louder than the external environment. You envision them during emotional breakthroughs that manifest entirely without warning. Instances when you suddenly grasp a reality about your own nature that was previously obscured from view. You are not thinking of them out of loneliness. You are not thinking of them because you require attention or outside validation. You think of them because a deep dimension of your being comprehends that the bond held immense gravity, and that gravity has not completely settled into place yet. Your soul recognizes unfinished lessons. It recognizes that a vital mechanism was set in motion through that specific bond. This is not weakness. This is not obsession. This is not attachment in the way people often describe it. This is integration. It is your internal landscape attempting to position an experience where it appropriately belongs, striving to absorb the wisdom it offered, and trying to comprehend how it fundamentally altered your path. A destined bond does not dissolve simply because calendar pages turn. It maintains a quiet presence. It manifests when you evolve. It manifests when you recuperate. It manifests when you outgrow former iterations of yourself. That is due to the fact that the bond was never strictly a romantic affair. It was an engine of transformation. Type yes if you want me to reveal the hidden truth about destined love. Many individuals inquire why a connection of this magnitude proves impossible to replace. They attempt to substitute it. They cross paths with someone new. They enter fresh relationships. They immerse themselves in dialogue, pastimes, and daily regimens. They persuade themselves that moving forward requires total forgetting. On occasion, they truly believe they have accomplished this goal. Existence appears standard once more. They share laughs. They engage socially. They step ahead. Yet beneath the exterior, a sense of incompletion lingers. A faint emptiness persists that refuses to evaporate. Not because the new companion lacks kindness, not because the relationship suffers from a lack of exertion. It persists because the new bond fails to awaken an identical depth. It fails to interrogate the same regions of the soul. A destined bond refuses to compete with alternatives. It occupies an entirely different plane of existence. This specific variety of connection is not constructed upon mere physical attraction. It is not centered around excitement or raw chemistry. It is not centered around comfort or simple familiarity. It is centered around evolution. It is about being compelled into greater honesty with your own reflection. It is about being forced to confront dimensions of your identity you may have completely ignored for a span of years. Destiny operates on both individuals independently, long before it ever orchestrates their reunion. Distance is not a punishment. It is a classroom. While the two of you remain separated, life is molding you via distinct paths, frequently utilizing discomfort as the tool. One individual begins mastering the art of boundaries. They learn to voice a refusal devoid of guilt. They learn to halt the habit of giving in excess of what they receive. They discover that affection does not demand total self-obliteration. They discover that prioritizing their own well-being is not selfish. It is mandatory. The other individual begins mastering the art of accountability. They learn that turning silent can inflict deep wounds. They learn that dodging emotions fails to dissolve them. They discover that behavior carries real consequences, even when their underlying intent was ambiguous. They discover that deep connection demands serious responsibility. One individual masters self-respect. They cease accepting ambiguity as evidence of affection. They cease waiting for a clarity that never materializes. They awaken to the reality that consistency is what matters. The other masters emotional bravery. They learn to sit squarely within discomfort rather than fleeing from it. They learn to confront vulnerability directly instead of finding an escape route. One individual learns to halt the pursuit. They realize that affection can never be coerced. They comprehend that chasing an individual who is unready merely generates misalignment and agony. The other learns to halt the flight. They realize that creating distance fails to insulate them from loss. It merely postpones their evolution. Both individuals are undergoing transformation, yet neither possesses the capacity to view the entire tapestry just yet. This is entirely intentional. If they perceived the final outcome prematurely, their evolution would stall. The presence of the unknown creates the necessary environment for transformation. Comment separated. If destiny ever pulled you apart from someone you felt was the one, before destined individuals can experience a reunion, illusions must collapse. The universe dismantles mistaken assumptions gradually, and frequently with great pain. Assumptions such as, affection should never feel difficult. Assumptions such as, if someone truly cared, they would never depart. Assumptions such as, affection must be purchased through suffering. Assumptions such as, another human being is designed to complete your identity. These concepts feel comforting, but they ultimately sabotage authentic love. They generate dependency. They generate fear. They generate expectations that no human being can realistically satisfy. Consequently, life strips them away. This dismantling does not occur gently. It occurs through silence, through distance, through disappointment, through windows of time when you are forced to sit entirely alone with your own internal monologue. You begin to perceive your reflection with total clarity. You begin to identify recurring patterns. You begin to comprehend precisely where you abandoned your own well-being in days gone by. You discover that affection is not designed to rescue you. You discover that another individual lacks the capacity to saturate the voids you have left unhealed. You discover that authentic connection initiates from a state of wholeness, not a state of emptiness. Share this video if you're going through a separation that feels spiritual. There arrives a specific moment when a profound shift occurs within your architecture. You cease requiring their presence. You cease scanning the environment for indications. You cease waiting for a communication to alter your reality. You cease wishing for their return as the prerequisite for your own wholeness. And that specific moment is entirely devoid of bitterness. It is peaceful. This is the precise juncture where destiny resumes its forward motion, not because you exerted greater effort, but because you relinquished your grip on a specific outcome. Authentic love is not dependency. It is choice. When both individuals possess the strength to stand entirely alone, when affection transitions into a genuine desire rather than a mechanism for survival, alignment begins. If they reappear transformed. They return with far greater awareness. They return fully capable of a depth that was previously out of reach. And if they fail to reappear, the wisdom gained still endures. You are no longer the identical individual who initially stepped into that bond. You are more resilient, more clear-headed, more anchored. You have fully integrated the lessons that were designed to be mastered. That is the absolute reality of destined connections. They are not about possession, they are about transformation. They enter your world not to remain static for eternity, but to rouse you, alter your fabric, and steer you toward a weightier comprehension of affection, self-respect, and internal evolution. When individuals who are destined for one another re-enter each other's spheres, the atmosphere feels quietly transformed. It is neither loud nor theatrical. It requires no audience. Instead, it feels rock solid. Your physical form relaxes well before your intellect can even articulate the reason. There is a reduction of friction in your thoughts, less anxiety regarding potential failures, and vastly less ego attempting to validate itself. You are no longer putting on a performance or shielding your vulnerability the way you formerly did. What manifests in that space instead is honesty. The variety that flows organically and without pressure, the variety that requires zero explanations or defensive posturing. The bond feels more tranquil because both participants have already navigated chaos in isolation. It feels more profound because they have peered into their own depths and confronted their own shadows. It feels more transparent because illusions have already been shattered. It is by no means perfect, and it never feigns perfection, but it operates with total awareness. There is deliberate consciousness in how phrasing is selected, how silence is valued, how personal boundaries are esteemed. There are no psychological games at play, no obscured motives, no requirement to cross-examine each other's devotions. There is zero ambiguity regarding your standing. There is simply recognition, equivalent to encountering an intimate truth once more, only this time fortified by maturity and internal strength. And on occasion, even when all of these elements align, those individuals do not reconstruct a shared life. This represents one of the most agonizing realities to digest. Yet the destiny linking them was entirely genuine. The bond was not a figment of imagination. It was not an error. It was not squandered time. Not every destined connection is engineered to endure for eternity. Some are designed to exist exclusively for the window of time required to transform you. Some are meant to step into your reality, destabilize your internal landscape, and subsequently depart once their specific objective has been fulfilled. Type growth. If this message is awakening something deep inside you, there are specific connections that step into your existence explicitly to shatter cycles that have been transmitted across generations. These are the specific relationships that lay bare the behavioral patterns you adopted long before you possessed the autonomy to choose. They expose the regions where affection was misidentified as total sacrifice, where codependency was misidentified as safety, where silence was misidentified as peace. These connections compel you to look at the baggage you have been transporting that was never genuinely your own. They pull buried agony into the daylight so it can finally be mended rather than reenacted. Alternative connections arrive to instruct you in self-love when you have consistently pushed your own needs aside. They reflect back the exact manner in which you permit others to treat you. Through their mirror, you see precisely where you compromise your standards, where you minimize your presence, and where you abandon your own well-being simply to retain someone's proximity. They rouse you to the realization that affection should never demand the forfeiture of your dignity, your voice, or your identity. These insights carry deep pain, yet they are completely mandatory. Absent their arrival, you might have persisted in over-giving while expecting far too little in return. Certain destined individuals unlock an emotional depth within your architecture that was previously dormant. They cause you to experience sensations you had systematically numbed yourself against. They serve as a reminder that you possess the capacity for profound care raw vulnerability, and deep connection. Even if they depart, they leave your spirit far more accessible than it was before their arrival. Destiny operates without haste. It does not sprint to offer explanations, and it refuses to surrender to your restlessness. It demands patience when you hunger for resolutions. It demands trust when ambiguity rests heavily upon your frame. And looking backward, you will perceive how calmly, how persistently it steered your course the entire time, even through the chapters that inflicted the sharpest pain. Like this video,